Hey everyone, Dr. Michael Breus, the sleep doctor here. What if I told you that one of the best tools for tracking your sleep was not an Apple Watch or some other piece of tech equipment that runs you several $100? No, actually, all you really need is a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper. Keeping a basic sleep journal or sleep diary can tell you a ton about how you're sleeping and what changes you may need to make. This is a tool I use literally with every single one of my patients. Whether they've got a tracker or not, they're still filling out the piece of paper. So I wanted to walk you through how to keep a sleep diary, what I look at in terms of the data, and how I come to my conclusions. So the very first thing that I like to look at is the diary itself. So let's go through what a typical sleep diary looks like and the questions that I would want you to be able to write down and take account of. So the first one is, I went to bed at what time, putting down the time that you see on the clock. That's actually the only question that you would answer the night of you're going to sleep. Everything else should be answered the next morning. The next morning, question number 2 would be, I feel like it took me this long to fall asleep, and you guess, right? So you might put, okay, I got in bed at 10 and I think it took me 15 minutes to fall asleep. So I fell asleep by 10:15. The third question I want to know is, what time did you wake up for the day? That doesn't mean like you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and went to pee. I mean, what time did you get up and get out of bed and be done for the day? That's a clock time. You put that down there. And then what time did you get out of bed? Now you might say, wait, you just asked me what time I got up for the day. That's what time I got out of bed. Turns out that there's a lot of people who hit this thing called the snooze button and they stay in bed for extended periods of time, or they wake up at 6 and then they wake up at 6:15 and then they get out of bed at 6:30. I want to know exactly when you get out of bed. Once I got that information, now I want to understand how many times did you wake up throughout the night? And an awakening is probably anything longer than about 2 or 3 minutes. I also want to know, if you woke up, how long was it for? So was it for 5 minutes? Was it for 10 minutes? Was it for 2 hours? That's going to be an important thing there. Another big factor is, during the daytime, did you take any naps? And also, how long did that nap last for? Some people might take a 5-minute nap. Some people might take a 5-hour nap. And then finally, the last 2 questions is a rating scale, one of sleep quality and then one of sleep quantity. So did I get enough? If you just look at these 10 questions, this becomes the basis for your sleep diary and the tool. So now we kind of understand, all right, there's 10 questions. I answer them the next day. I don't have to be exact and everything. And by the way, you don't have to write a book. You really just need to have data, because what you're going to do with this is you're going to analyze it and or give it to your doctor or to a sleep specialist. Very first thing you do, though, is you got to do a baseline. What's a baseline? That's where you don't change any behavior, but we look at what does your sleep look like right then and there. So once you've got this downloaded in a PDF, what I want you to do is every day for 7 days is just do what you're doing. I don't care if you stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning one night. I don't care if you have 12 cups of coffee. I don't care. I just want all the data for a baseline week, because we're going to be comparing that baseline once we start making changes throughout your sleep cycle. What I'm looking for is a minimum of 7 days, maybe 10. But here's the reason why, is people have sleep differences when they sleep during the week versus sleeping on the weekend. And so I really want to know and understand. Don't change your behavior. Remember, I want you to put down exactly what occurs. So if you sleep in for 2 hours every Saturday and Sunday, I want you to write that in there. Or if you stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning because you went out to a concert, I want you to put that in there, because once again, we've got to get all that information. Now we've moved on to week 2. Week 2 is where I usually start changing things. The very first thing that I ask people to do is have a consistent wake up time. Notice I didn't say bedtime, I said wake up time. And this needs to be for about 7 to 10 days. Also, to be very clear, I base this wake up time on their chronotype. For folks out there who don't know, I'm kind of the chronotype guy. If you want to learn what your chronotype is, which by the way is your genetically predetermined sleep schedule, which kind of tells you when to be awake, if you go to chronoquiz.com, you can learn that right away. But for week 2, I ask people to identify their chronotypical wake-up time and meet that for 7 complete days. Week number 3 is very interesting, because that's where I try to make their bedtime consistent. Now, this can be tough because on the weekends, people really still like to go out and things like that. So I give people a little bit of flexibility on the bedtime, but that wake-up time has to be consistent during the week and on the weekends. So what I'm trying to do here, remember, week 1 is baseline, week 2 is wake up time, week 3 is go to bed time. So that's what we're starting to do is function based on this. And again, all based on your chronotype. Next, we look at awakening. So if someone has more than one awakening for more than about 5 minutes, I want to reduce that amount of time in bed because they're spending time in bed doing something that's not sleep, right? This is a technique that we use in sleep therapy called sleep restriction. I want to be very, very clear. You should not be doing sleep restriction on your own. This is something that you could do while working with a therapist, but I want to explain it to you because there are some parts of it that you can do by yourself. So if someone was getting into bed at, let's say, 11, but they're not falling asleep until 11:45, had 2 awakenings for, let's say, 25 minutes apiece, I would probably turn to them and say, why are you getting in bed at 11? You're not falling asleep until 11:45, and you have about almost an hour's worth of time in the middle of the night where you're awake. Let's move that bed timing to about 12:30. Here's the thing. If they're not sleeping and they're lying there for 45 minutes, all they're doing is getting upset, right? They're staring at the wall. They're looking at the clock. They're saying, I'm not sleeping. I'm not sleeping. What is going on here? So by restricting the amount of time that they have in bed, still keeping that wake up time consistent with their chronotype, but inching that bedtime later, we squelch the amount of time they have. And guess what? Their body begins to consolidate and get that sleep. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get an effect, usually 21 days to actually reset your circadian cycle. But we often find that this can be incredibly helpful. And we start to see these awakenings begin to reduce. So what ends up happening is, let's say somebody had a 30-minute or hour-long awakening. If I push the time down that they can actually be in bed, all of a sudden they're more sleep deprived, which makes them more tired, which makes them sleep through that awakening. Now I know something good is happening. The way I can also tell is that I look down at the ratings, which were the last 2 questions about quantity and quality. And that's where I'm going to say, have the ratings increased when the awakenings decreased? Because then I know I'm on the right path. So remember, knowing your chronotype is one of the easiest places to start. You can figure that out by going to chronoquiz.com, then download the sleep diary so you can be doing this. And also, do me a favor, check out my video right here on going to bed at the perfect time based on your chronotype. So if it's not really evident to you, I've got a video that's going to teach you the whole thing. This is Dr. Michael Breus, the Sleep Doctor, wishing you sweet dreams.